Hello, it's Gem Games here, and in this video we're going to make this mobile touch interface customizable. So if we click on this edit, now it opens this menu here. Now we can drag this to wherever we want and we can save, and they will be there. And also what we can do, if we move this to somewhere and we don't like that, we can cancel it. And also we can reset it to default and save. And of course you can add here as many buttons as you want, and you can make them all work with this system. So yeah, let's get started. So first we want to go to the mobile touch folder and we want to open the touch buttons. Okay, what we want to do here now is we want to duplicate one of these buttons that we have created. So let's duplicate the run. Now let's anchor this to the top middle position, and let's set the position X to 0 and position Y to 0, and size let's set it to 9. Actually, let's not do anything with that yet. Let's go to the normal style. Let's change our button image to something else. What do we have here? Oh. Where do we have this settings button? Okay, now let's change the size X to 96, size Y to 96, and let's set the Y alignment to -0.5, like that. Now let's delete run text and let's rename this button to change mode button. Okay. Now let's compile, let's save, let's go to the third person map. Now let's duplicate the touch buttons widget blueprint. And let's call this touch edit buttons, like that. And now what we want to do, let's actually open that. Let's drag it next to the other windows. And here, what we want to do, let's delete the other one of these buttons. Let's leave the other. Okay, and let's check that our anchor point is here on the left top corner. Okay, it has to be there to this system to work. And now let's move this to, actually let's first set the size to 80 on both X and Y. And let's delete the text. Now let's go to the normal style and let's change the image to this. Where is it? Accept one, this one. Now let's change the color to some shade of green. Something like that. Now we can copy this normal style. Let's close it and paste it to Howard and paste it to Pressed. And on Pressed, let's open the tint and let's change the color a little bit darker, like that. Okay, now we want to set the... Oh, sorry, I said that you have to set the anchor to the top left corner. That was incorrect. Sorry about that. We want to set it to the top middle part. Okay, now let's set the position X to 150, Y to 56, and this Y alignment to 0 and X to 0.5. It should be around there. Okay, now let's rename this button to accept button. Now what we want to do, we want to duplicate it. And on this button, what we want to do, we want to rename it to cancel button. And we want to set the position X to -150 and position Y to 56. Now let's open the normal style. Let's change the image to this X, so cancel. Now let's change the tint to some shade of red. You can use whatever you want. This is good for me. Now let's copy the normal style. Let's close it and paste it to Howard. Pressed. And also here on the pressed, let's change the tint to a little bit darker. Something like that. Okay, now one more time. Let's duplicate some of these buttons, or one of these buttons. It doesn't matter which one. Now let's move this to here, the left corner, and let's set the anchor point to the left top part here. Position X to 56 and Y already should be at 56. Alignment X to 0 and Y to 0. Yes, like that. Now let's rename this button to default button. And now let's open the normal. Let's change the style to this empty button, basically. Oh, okay, and it was not that one, sorry. This one, flat light 09. Now let's set the color back to white. Let's copy the style, normal, copy, paste to Howard, paste to pressed. Let's open the press and let's set it to a little bit darker. Okay, now let's get a text. Let's move it in the default button. Let's change the text to default. And also let's change the color to black. And font, we want to set the font size to 16 and align text to center like this. Now also here on the text, let's select that again and let's go to the visibility. We want to set this visible to non-hit testable, sorry, like that. So we cannot click on the text, because otherwise if that's only visible and we click on exactly on the text, it will not accept that as button click. So yeah, now what we want to do here is we want to create some opening animation. So let's select the asset button. Let's add animation. Let's call this open anim. Let's click on it. Let's add a asset button track. And here let's add a render opacity first. Let's go to the, let's make this a little bit bigger. Let's go to the 10-second, 0.10-second mark. And here we want to set this to, oh, sorry. Here on the 0 mark, we want to set it to 0. And on the 0.1 mark, we want to set it to 0 also. And 0.25, here we want to set it to 1. Okay, so it looks like this. And what else we want to do? We want to add a track, transform track. And we want to open it and translation. And here at the 0.25, we want to add a key on the X. Now let's go to the 0. And let's set it to -150, the X. And now it should look like this. Okay, now let's do the same thing for the decline, cancel button. Let's add a cancel button track. Let's add a render opacity. Let's set it to 0 on 0. Let's set it to 0 on 0.1 and 1 on 0.25. Now let's go back to 0. Let's add another track on the cancel. Let's set the transform. Let's open the translation X. We want to set this to 150 positive. And here on the 0.25, we want to set it to 0. Okay, now one more thing. Let's close this. Let's click on the default button. And let's add a default button track. Let's add here only the render opacity. So on the end, on 0.25, it should be 1. And on the start, I will make it 0 and 0.10. Let's make it 0. So it, yeah. Now, if we play the animation, you can see here. See, it looks looks like that they come from the under this or from I don't know what I'm talking about, but yeah, you understand. Now, one more thing, we want to duplicate this animation and we want to call it close anim. Let's select the close anim. Here on the default button, we want to set the render opacity on the start to 1. Let's delete this. Actually, no, let's not delete that. Let's set this to 1 also. And let's actually move this to 0.15. And now, at the end, let's set it to 0. Now, let's select our cancel track. Here on the start, render opacity to 1. Let's move this to 0.15. Let's set it to 1. And at the end, let's set it to 0. And translation, here at the end, let's make it 150. And here at the start, let's make it 0. And now, the accept button, render opacity on the start, let's set it to 1. Let's move this to 0.15. Let's set it to 1. And here at the end, let's set it to 0. And on the translation, here at the end, let's make it minus 150. And here at the start, let's make it 0. So now our close animation looks like this. So our open animation is like this, and close animation is this. Okay. Now here in the close animation, let's do one more thing. Let's close all of this. Let's add a new track, event track trigger. Let's go to the end and let's add there a key. Let's double click on the key. Now we have this sequencer event here. We want to call this stop editing. And yeah, no, stop editing. What I'm talking about, sorry. Close widget. Yeah, close widget, and we don't actually have to do anything here right now, but that's good to have it already there. And yeah, one more thing that we have to do here is we want to go back to the designer. We want to delete this button from here because we already have it on the other widget. Okay, like that. So now let's compile. Let's save all. And actually, we have some. Yeah, we want to delete all these events from the event graph. Let's compile and save. Okay. Then we want to select our player ref that we got from this because we duplicated this. We want to change this to touch widget ref. Let's change the PP third-person character to touch buttons object reference and expose on spawn and instance edible. Compile, save. Now let's go back to the third-person map. Let's create here a enumeration. Okay. Let's call this buttons state or something like that. Let's open it. Let's add two enumerators. First one should be called playing, and the second one should be called editing. Let's save, and we can actually close this. Now we also want to create a new blueprint class. Type save game. Okay, and let's call this button layout save. Okay, let's open that. Let's leave it open. Now let's go to the touch buttons and let's go to the graph. So what we want to do here on the touch buttons graph. First, we want to add a new variable. Let's call it buttons state. This will tell you like in what state are we right now. So let's search for a button state enumerator like that. Compile, save. And the next thing, what we want to do is we want to select our change mode button, and on pressed, let's add a new event here at the top. And what we want to do here is we want to get the button state. We want to switch on it. So basically we're checking which state are we in. And let's actually align this. Okay, if we are on the playing, then we want to set the button state. We want to set it to editing. Okay. Then what we want to do, we want to get the change mode button. We want to set is enabled, and we want to set it disabled like this. After that, what we want to do, we want to create widget, and we want to create these touch edit buttons. And from the touch widget ref, we want to get the get reference to self. Let's compile it and save. And so the next thing what we want to do here is we want to go to the designer. We want to add a little animation also here. But first let's add a image. Let's move it to the screen. Let's make it set order -1. So it's under everything like this. Now let's anchor it to the full screen. Let's zero all the offsets like that. Let's set the color to black and alpha to 0.5. I think that's pretty good. Let's rename these to background or something like that. Let's make it a variable. Let's set the render opacity to 0. And now let's create an animation. Sorry about that. Yeah, let's call this add editing background or something like that. Here on the add editing background, what we want to do is we just want to add the background. Want to add a render opacity track. On the 0 it should be 0, and on the 0.25 let's make it 1. Let's duplicate this animation. Let's call this remove editing background. Let's open it. Let's change this value on the 0 to 1 and on the end to 0 like that. Now let's compile and save, and let's go to back to the graph. Here in the graph, what we want to do now is we want to open the animation from the variables. Let's get the add editing background and let's play animation like this. Okay. So next thing we want to add a variable. Let's call it move. Let's make it like moving button ref, and let's change the variable type to button. Oh, not button. Button object reference. Okay, let's create another variable. Let's call this moving button, and this is a boolean. And yep, the next thing is that we want to create a new function called moving buttons, like something like that. Now let's go to the event graph and let's add a event tick here. Okay, let's add these moving buttons to the event tick. Now let's align these. Let's open the moving buttons, and here what we want to do, we want to add a branch. We want to check if we are moving buttons. And if we are, from the true, we want to get mouse position on viewport. Then we want to get our move button ref and get it as slot as canvas slot, like this. And let's align them. I'll actually move this a little bit further. And from here, from this slot as canvas slot, we want to set position. Oh, sorry. And the return value from the get mouse position on viewport to the in position, like that. Okay, let's compile, save. Let's go back to the event graph. We can close the moving buttons. And now here on the event graph, where we have all the on pressed here, on pressed jump, for example, let's move this jump event a little bit further. Because what we want to do is we want to get the button's state to here. And we want to switch on it again. From the playing, we want to call the jump event. So if you are playing, we want to jump. So we want to use the button as normal. But if we are editing, what we want to do is we want to get our jump button. And we want to get our moving button ref, and we want to set it. That button this. Let's get from editing. So we are setting our jump button to this variable. After that, we want to set our moving button boolean to true. Now, let's actually copy these, keep the control pressed, and copy these. Now, Control C, let's copy all that. And now here on the, actually move this run buttons a little bit further down, and also this on release jump button. Let's move this further. Okay, now here on this one, what we want to do is let's cut these links from the bottom one. So Alt and left click. Let's select these and let's move them a lot further. Now these, let's move it also further. Now let's paste the code. So code is simple as switch on button state. And on the playing, we want to call the run. Actually, let's move this closer. Okay, also this better. No. We want to change this jump button reference from jump button, of course, to the run button. Yeah, you want to check that you remember to change this. Now, let's copy only this. And here on the unreleased jump button, let's paste also this. And here on the, I will have to check. Yeah, from the editing, we want to set the moving buttons to false, like that. Now let's select this and Q and to align. Now here on the unreleased run button, we have to do something else. We have to move this stop running to here. And let's paste the switch on button state. From the playing, let's connect it there. And from here, we want to get the player ref, so we can actually call the event. Let's actually move it to the same spot as this. And now from the editing, what we want to do, we want to set the moving button to false. Okay. And yeah, on pressed, is this correct? Here is correct. Okay. So as simple as on pressed, you want to set the reference to this variable, and you want to set the moving button to true. And on released, you want to, from the playing, if you have something that happens when you release the button, you want to set it to here. And otherwise, you only want to set from the editing to moving button false, like this. And then one more thing that we want to do here is, what is it? Oh yeah, we want to get, actually maybe here at the bottom, let's not put it there. Maybe over somewhere, let's move it around. Let's move these a little bit further down. Let's add a touch one event here. Okay. And then from the released, let's set the moving buttons back to false, just to be sure. This is not necessarily, I don't know how to say it. This is like, we might not need this, but let's just add it, just to be sure. So yeah, now what we want to do is we want to actually try and see how it looks. So when we press on this, oh, it will actually not open those additional buttons yet, but okay. But you can see we have the background and we can actually move these, but we cannot save the location yet. Okay, and also I noticed that this button is not working correctly. So let's fix that. Let's go to the designer and let's select this. Let's copy the normal style, paste, let's close it and paste it to Howard on the pressed. And here on the pressed, let's change this tint to a little bit darker. Like that. Let's compile, let's save. And then what we want to do, we want to go to the graph. And here, here on the pressed change mode button, we want to, after the create touch edit buttons, let's move these a little bit further, and we want to add this to viewport so we can actually see it. Okay, now when we play, click this, we will have this, but the animation is not working yet. So the next thing here, under the on-press change mode button, what we want to do, let's move everything under that further down. Now here, let's create a custom event. Let's call this stop editing. And here what we want to do, we want to set the button state to editing, playing. After that we want to set the moving buttons to false. Then what we want to do, we want to get the change mode button and we want to set is enabled. We want to set it to true, so it is enabled again. And let's move it to the same position as the top one, like that. Actually, a little bit further up, something like that. And the next thing is we want to get our remove editing background. Let's move it here. Let's play. And I like to keep these, let's connect this. I like to keep these like this and like this, so the code is somehow easier to like read, at least for me, I don't know. And also let's make these a little bit better looking, something like that maybe. Yeah, something like that. Okay. Okay, let's compile, let's save, and now let's see. So now we can jump, we can run, we can edit, now we can move the buttons. Oh, we haven't mapped close or anything like that yet. Okay, so the next thing what we want to do, we want to create a new variable. Let's call it buttons ref list or something like that. Let's change the type to button object reference and change from single to an array. Compile and save. Let's create another variable. Let's call this buttons location. Let's change the type to vector 2D. Let's duplicate this. Let's call this buttons location before editing. Let's duplicate it once more and let's call it buttons location default. Now what we want to do is we want to create a function called add buttons to list. Here we want to get our we have to go to the designer. We have to select our canvas panel and make it variable. Let's actually change the name back to only canvas panel. Okay, now we can see the canvas panel here. Let's get it to here. From here, we want to get all children like this. And from here, we want to get a for each loop. Let's connect it to this. Now we want to get from the array element and we want to cast to button. So this will cast to the button class. Let's connect it to the loop body. And now we want to get our buttons ref list and we want to set array element. Let's connect it to here. And now we want to get this as button and connect it to the item. And now let's get the index and connect it to the index. Let's add some reroutes here. So it goes under this because we will need one more thing from there. Move this to here, even a little bit further down. And now let's add a reroute to here. So this looks good. Something like this maybe. Size to fit has to be true or it doesn't work. And then we want to get from this as button and we want to get canvas slot as canvas slot. And from here we want to get position. And now we want to get our buttons location default. Right here. And we want to set array element like this. After this. Now we want to connect this to the item. Now from the, actually let's move this a little further down. And from the index to the index and size to fit. And reroute here. So we are getting all the childrens of the canvas panel. We're checking if they are button. If they are, we are adding them to this list. Size to fit, if it's not true, then it will not add them if you haven't added enough slots on that variable. And after that, we want to get that button as canvas slot, otherwise we cannot get the position. Then we want to get the position and add those by the same index. Oh, not like that. By the same index to this other array, buttons location default. Okay, so let's compile. Let's save. And so now let's go to the event graph. Let's add a event begin play here at the top, which is called event construct. I didn't remember that. So it's called event construct on the widget blueprint. And here we want to call the add buttons to list function on the start. Then we want to create a new function called load buttons layout. Now let's go back to the event graph. We can close the add buttons to list. Let's connect or move the load buttons layout also to here that we can play after the add buttons to list. Now let's open the load buttons layout. Now we want to go to the buttons layout save. Actually first, let's copy this buttons location variable from here. So let's copy. Let's go to the buttons layout save and let's click on the variables and Control and V. So it pasted it there. This is basically buttons location vector 2D. So let's rename this buttons location saved or something like that. And let's compile, save, and now we can close this buttons layout save file or save blueprint. And now on the touch buttons load buttons layout, what we want to do, we want to first check if does save game exist. Slot name, let's call it like layout or something like that. Let's get a branch from the return value. And first let's do the false because it's easier. do it this way. So if we don't have if it doesn't exist, then we want to create save game object. We want to select our buttons layout save. From here, we want to promote this to a variable. Let's call this save game. Oh, sorry. Save game ref. And as that, what we want to do is we want to create a new function called save button layout. Okay, let's actually create this first. So here on the save buttons layout, first what we have to do is we have to actually create one more function, or actually two more, but one for now. So this will be called get button locations. Now let's go back to the save button layout. We want to call this on the start, like this. Now on the get button location, what we want to do here is we want to get the we can actually get it from here, canvas panel, and get all children again from here, for each loop like this, and from the array element cast to button. Now let's get the buttons locations. Where is it? Sorry, I'm a little bit tired. So buttons locations array. Set array element from this, and now let's get the index to index. Let's add some reroutes here. And also now let's get from the as button, let's get slot as canvas slot, and from here we want to get the get position like this. Now let's connect this to the item and size to fit. And actually let's move this to here. Let's compile, let's save, and we can close this. Now on the save buttons layout, what we want to do, we want to first get our buttons location array, and we want to get the save game ref under it, and we want to get the buttons location saved and set. We want to set it, and we want to set it to this variable. So we are basically, as this name tells you, we are saving this array to this save game ref. After that, we want to get from this again, and we want to save game to slot. Let's move it to here. Let's add a reroute. Let's align this. Now let's put the slot name here. It should be the same as here. So layout. It has to be written exactly as on the other parts. So layout. And that's it. Now we can compile and save and close this. And yeah, now here on the load buttons layout, we want on the true. What we want to do here is, if we have already the save file, then we want to load game from slot. Here also slot name layout has to be written exactly, and then we want to cast to button layout save file, and from there we want to get our save game ref, and we want to set it here. So we are setting it to as button layout save. After that, we want to get buttons location saved. We're getting the location that we have on the save file. Then we want to set our buttons locations to that, from that, like that. Yeah. Now the next thing, we want to create a new function. this is the last one. This will be called set locations. And now let's go back to the load buttons layout. We want to call this set locations after this. Okay, now let's go to the set locations. And here, what we want to do is we want to add a input. And this will be called buttons data or something like that. And the type will be what it will be. It will be vector 2D, like this. Now on the load buttons layout, we want to connect the buttons location, buttons data. Actually, we can do that. Wait a second. Oh, I'm stupid. On the set locations, let's set it to this to array. Now here we can connect it. So we are setting the location of the by the buttons location variable list or array. Here on the set locations, now we want to promote this to a local variable. And we want to bring this local variable to buttons location array. This is just so we can call this function from other parts of the code and we can connect other arrays on it. So we can use all of these three on the same function. So we don't have to do three of these. Oh, this is actually not buttons. It will be called buttons location array. Now, after that, we want to get the buttons reference list and we want to do a for each loop from it. And from there, what we want to do, we want to also get the buttons location array from the local variables. And then we want to get from the array element, we want to slot as canvas slot. And from here, we want to set position. This from the loop body. Okay, now from buttons location array, we want to get from it, get a reference, connect to here, connect the array index to here, and position to here. So we are getting the buttons references and we are setting their positions by the buttons location array vector 2D values, like this. So let's compile, let's save. Now we want to go to the touch edit buttons and to the event graph. Okay, let's create a event construct event. And from here, what we want to do, we want to get the open animation reference and we want to get from it and play animation. Connect it here, like this. So we will play the animation when we open this. Let's align this. After that, we want to get our touch widget reference and we want to get the buttons locations. No, we don't want to set it. We want to get it. So buttons locations get. Now let's get from this reference again and we want to set buttons location before editing. Let's connect from here. Now we want to connect this to here and add a reroute to here. And also let's move this a little bit further down. So we are setting the buttons location before editing from this. So we are setting this to this. Okay. And the next thing that we have to do is we want to select our asset button from the list and we want to add a onPressed event under here. And from the onPressed, what we want to do, we want to get the touch widget reference. And from here, we want to call the save button layout. And then we want to get our close animation. And we want to play it. Play animation. Like this. Let's move this. Actually, let's move it a little bit like that. And then the next thing, we want to we have the let's see cancel button. So cancel button on pressed event. Let's move it a little bit further down. Here, actually, let's move a little bit more. Here, what we want to do, we want to get the touch widget reference again. I have said touch widget reference like, I don't know how many times, but many times. But now we want to set locations. Let's move it all the way here. And now let's add a reroute to here actually, and let's move this to the same line. Let's actually align these. Now let's get a buttons location before editing. Let's get it, and let's get from this, and let's set button. Oh, what I'm doing? Touch widget reference. Buttons. Set buttons location. This one, like this. So we are setting the buttons location before editing to the buttons location. Now let's connect this to the set locations. Let's move these to a little bit further. Now let's add a reroute to here. Now let's connect these two. And so what this does, let's actually align this first. So, oh no, I don't want to do it like that. Okay, that's good enough. So we're getting the buttons location before editing because we're canceling the editing and we are setting it to the buttons location variable. Then we are setting the locations. Okay. After that, we want to do the same as here. Let's copy this play close animation. Let's paste it here. Now that we have both of these here, we can move these to the same position if we want. I like to do it like this. Okay, and the next one, which is actually the last one, under here, the default button on pressed. Let's move it further down. Here, we want to actually copy all this code. Control C, Control V, move it to here, connect. Now we want to just align these, change this buttons location before editing to buttons location default, like this. Let's connect it to here. And yeah, we don't want to actually close, play the close animation because we don't want to close this widget when we set the default. Okay, now on the sequencer events, what we have to do is simple as we want to get the touch widget reference again, and we want to call the stop editing function. And after that, we want to just remove this from parent. So remove from parent. Okay, let's compile, let's save all. And now we should have everything working. So let's play, let's see. When we edit, we can move these. Let's move them to here, for example. Let's save. Yeah, let's see if it's saved. Let's play again. Yes, it is saved. Now, when we move them back here, save, we edit. Let's see if the cancel works. It does. And also the default. Yes, and now we have to save. We can actually also cancel after default if we don't want to do that. So if we are having this here, save it there, and we want to default, but then we are like, we want to go back to there, so we can click this. But now, default and save. So yeah, everything is working like it's supposed to work. So yeah, I actually think that that was all for this video. If you like what you saw, please click the like button and subscribe for more. And yeah, hope you guys have a great day and see you on the next one. Bye.